Joe King walks out on stage and says,
"Hello, yes, my name's Joe King. I'm not joking, though I prefer to be called Juris Dr. King. All right, well, Madonna was hospitalized for several days following a very serious bacterial infection. It was so serious that she was on our short list to be a guest on our show for the very first time. But unfortunately for us at the Joe King Show, she made it through alive and well. Now, in Minnesota, police arrested a 19-year-old after he allegedly began attacking patrons and employees of a restaurant by pelting them with bags of Skittles. In honor of Pride Month, officers told him to taste the rainbow as they tased him. Today, the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action affecting universities' ability to use race as a factor in its admission decisions. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court's ruling did not affect police, who will still use race as a factor in who they pull over. The WGA writers' strike is still ongoing. Rumor has it that the writers were given a new contract that was to their liking, but unfortunately they were unable to sign it as they are on strike from writing anything.
Joe King walks off stage and onto another stage, sits in a seat behind a desk and says,
"Please welcome to the program the French stage actress, once called the Queen of the Pose and the Princess of the Gesture, the world's first celebrity, Sarah Bernhardt."
Sarah Bernhardt emerges from behind a curtain with her hands clasped under her chin before stretching them out to the audience. Applause, applause, applause. Bernhardt walks over and takes a seat next to King's desk. King stands up and takes Bernhardt's hand and gives it a kiss and says,
"Welcome to the show, mademoiselle."
As King sits back down, Bernhardt says, "Thank you for having me." King:
"Now, I have to admit I wasn't familiar with your work until recently when I discovered through her Instagram story that Saturday Night Live's Chloe Fineman is a big fan of yours, and I'm trying to get their attention over there on that show. So I hope you don't mind."
Bernhardt: "That's okay. I'm not familiar with you either, but I'm happy to be on the show."
King: "Very good. Now, you were born in Paris to Judith Bernard, a courtesan with a wealthy clientele. And while it wasn't known for a long time who your father was, it is now known that he was a lawyer."
Bernhardt: "That's correct."
King: "You know, I myself am a lawyer. That's why I go by the name Juris Dr. King."
Bernhardt: "Congratulations."
King: "Anyway, when you were 7, you were sent to boarding school, acted in your first theatrical performance in the play Classified, where you held the role of Queen of the Fairies and performed your first of many dramatic death scenes."
Bernhardt: "That's correct. I loved it. I remember it very fondly."
King: "I have you beat, though, there, Sarah. When I was 5, I was in my first play, where I played one of the Munchkins in the Lollipop Guild."
Bernhardt: "You look like you could still play a Munchkin."
King: "Well, I'm actually quite tall. I just suffer from an optical illusion condition that makes me appear much shorter."
Bernhardt rolls her eyes.
King: "Anyway, by the time you were 10, your mom made her way up the ranks of French society with her courtesan business, and she was able to get French statesman Charles de Mornay to sponsor you to get you admitted to Grand Champ, an exclusive Augustine convent school near Versailles. And while at the convent, you performed the part of Archangel Raphael in the story Tobias and the Angel."
Bernhardt: "Yes, I love performing there. And while I was there, I declared my intention to become a nun. But I didn't always follow convent rules. I was accused of sacrilege when I arranged a Christian burial, complete with a procession ceremony for my pet Lisa."
King: "Very good. Now at 12, while at the convent, you received your first communion, despite being a member of the Jewish race."
Bernhardt: "Right. When I asked if I were Christian, I said once, I am a Roman Catholic and a member of the great Jewish race. I'm waiting until Christians become better."
King: "You know what's funny about that is that I'm an alter ego myself who happens to be Jewish, while my original ego, Tom Murphy, was raised Catholic. How about that, right?"
Bernhardt: Is this interview about me, or instead your various egocentricities?
King, fair enough. Now, after your father died, your mother summoned Monet and others to figure out what you were to do with your life, and Monet suggested you become an actress?
Bernhardt, yes, and despite my role growing up, these terrified me, as I had never been inside a real theater. But Monet brought my mother and I to a play, and I was so moved by the emotion of the play, I began to sob uncontrollably. Even though Monet got angry that I caused a scene by my sobbing, he was able to get me an audition at the Paris Conservatory, and I prepared with vivid exaggeration, and at my audition I recited the fable of the two pigeons by La Fontaine, and I won them over and was invited to become a student.
Okay, very good. And from there you studied at the conservatory for 2 years and received your first marriage proposal.
Bernhardt, yes, I learned my diction, grand gestures, and simplicity from the actors who taught me at the conservatory. And as for the wedding proposal, I had to say no, but I was confused, sorry, and delighted because he loved me the way people love in plays at the theater.
Okay, and from there you joined the theater company at Theatre Francois and made your debut in the title of Racine's Insigné.
Bernhardt, yes, it wasn't a success. I had stage fright and rushed through my lines.
Okay, and you didn't remain there long, as other members of the company resented your rapid rise, and you got into some trouble when a theater doorkeeper addressed you as Little Bernhardt. You broke your umbrella over his head.
Bernhardt, yes, I apologize for that profusely. And when he retired 20 years later, I brought him a cottage in Normandy.
Okay, very good. Now, your sister and another actress at the company then got into a scrape that ended up getting you fired from the company?
Bernhardt, yes, that was very unfortunate. I was only 18 at the time, and my mother was upset. But I joined another theater, the Gymnase, and was an understudy for 2 other actresses.
Right, but you then caused yet another scandal when at a reception hosted by Napoleon III, you recited a poem by Victor Hugo, a harsh critic of the emperor, which caused him to immediately leave the reception.
Bernhardt, that's right. I was foolish. I didn't know what I was doing. I only had one other role at Gymnase before I quit, decided to travel and take on lovers.
And you indeed took on at least one lover as you gave birth to your only child in 1864 at the age of 20.
Bernhardt, yes, my adorable Maurice.
Now all these years later, can we play some Maury Povich and find out who was the father?
Bernhardt, no, I'm going to keep it secret.
Very well, you eventually joined the Porte St. Martin Theater, where you were initially unsuccessful, as you were often chided for being too thin for your roles, a problem the rest of us would love to have, but you eventually had success as Cordelia in King Lear, and had your breakout performance as Kean by Alexandre Dumas, in which you played the female lead part of Anna Danby.
Bernhardt, yes, the play was interrupted in the beginning by the disturbances in the audience, by young spectators who called out, "Down with the Dumas, give us Hugo." But I addressed the audience directly and said, "Friends, you wish to defend the cause of justice. Are you doing it by making Monsieur Dumas responsible for the banishment of Monsieur Hugo?" The audience then fell silent, and I received an enormous ovation at the end, and even immediately received a large raise.
Okay, hopefully that made sense to our listeners who are adept in 19th century French politics. Anyway, you were then on the path to stardom, including your performance in François Coppé's Les Passantes.
Bernhardt, yes, Odeon was the theater that I loved the most, and that I only left with the regret. We all loved each other. Everyone was gay. The theater was like a continuation of school. All the young came there. I remember my few months at the Comédie Française. That little world was stiff, gossipy, jealous. I remember my few months at the gymnase. There they talked only about dresses and ass, and chatted about 100 things that had nothing to do with the art. At the Odeon, I was happy. We thought only of putting on plays. We rehearsed mornings, afternoons, all the time. I adored that.
King. Very good, but then not so good was that the outbreak of the Franco-Prussian War abruptly interrupted your career, but you took charge of converting the Odeon Theater into a hospital for soldiers wounded in the battles outside Paris. You organized the placement of 32 beds in the lobby and the foyers, brought in your own personal chef to prepare soup for the patients, and persuaded your wealthy friends and admirers to donate supplies for the hospital. And besides organizing the hospital, you worked there as a nurse, assisting the chief surgeon with amputations and operations.
Bernhardt. Yes, I felt it was the least I could do.
King, very good. Now, after the war ended, despite considering retirement, you returned to Odeon, where you were the lead in a new play, Jean-Marie by André Theroux, followed by playing the Queen of Spain in Ruy Blas.
Bernhardt, can I just say, you are really struggling with your pronunciations.
King, well, we didn't all study French diction at the Paris Conservatory. Anyway, you then took the money and returned to Theatre François.
Bernhardt, that's right. I took a raise after Odeon refused to match. Is that okay with you?
King shrugs and says, works for me, but I thought Odeon was where everyone was gay.
Bernhardt, I had expensive tastes.
King, fair enough. Now at Theatre François, otherwise known as Comédie Française, you took on some of the more famous and demanding roles in French theater, including Junie in Britannicus by Jean Racine, the male role of Cherubin in The Marriage of Figaro by Pierre Bourgeois, the lead in Voltaire's 5-act tragedy Zaire, and the lead in Racine's Phèdre, played opposite the celebrated tragedian Jean Monnet Sully, with Phèdre becoming your most famous classical role.
Bernhardt, are you just going to list everything I did, or are you going to let me talk?
King, go ahead.
Bernhardt, well, the next role I had was as Donegal in Ernie by Victor Hugo. Hugo saw me perform, and the next day, he sent me a note that said, Madame, you were great and charming. You moved me, the old warrior. And at a certain moment when the public, touched and enchanted by you, applauded, I wept. The tear which you caused me to shed is yours. I place it at your feet. The note was accompanied by a tear-shaped pearl and a gold bracelet.
King, very good. Now from there you traveled to London and performed at theaters and private homes there before returning to Paris and resigning from Comédie Françoise.
Bernhardt, yes, I wasn't getting along with the management there, and it was just time to go.
King, okay, and then you were on your own and created your own troupe and did tours of England and the U.S., including performing La Dame aux Camélias by Alexandre Dumas, which quickly became your most performed and famous role.
Bernhardt, yes, I played the role more than 8,000 times and acted regularly and successfully in it until the end of my life. Audiences were often in tears during my famous death scene at the end.
King, now in New York, in your debut performance there, is it true you made 27 curtain calls?
Bernhardt, it is.
King, wow, amazing. Now, after your U.S. tour, the French somewhat soured on you when you returned home?
Bernhardt, yes, no crowd greeted me when I returned to Paris, and theater managers offered no new roles. The Paris press ignored my tour, and much of the Paris theater world resented me for leaving the most prestigious national theater to earn a fortune abroad.
King, okay, but eventually your place in French theater was restored. You did a European theater, came home and got married to Jacques de Mala, and performed in Fedora, a melodrama written for you by Victorian Sardou.
Bernhardt. Yes, he marriage didn't last long, and a lot of money was lost on Fedora, so it was kind of a tough time.
Okay, but eventually you then went on a 15-month world tour, selling out all over the world, and you did the same every 3 or 4 years the rest of your life when you needed money.
Bernhardt. That is correct.
Okay, and is it true that you used to sleep in a coffin?
Bernhardt. Occasionally, yes. It was good practice for the afterlife.
Okay, very good. Now, we're running out of time. But is it true that you had your leg amputated in 1915, and from there were carried around on a palanquin, yet still managed to perform another 8 years?
Bernhardt. Yes, when I lost me leg, I just said Kwame, meaning something in English like all the same, and continue to do what I love.
Okay, very good. Well, Sarah, it has been an honor to have you on the show. I hope that when the writer's strike ends, you'll come on and host Saturday Night Live.
Bernhardt. I'd love that.
Okay, Sarah Bernhardt, everybody.
Applause, applause, applause.
Okay, that's all the time we have for this show, but tune in the next one where we interview another deceased guest. Until then, I'm Joe King, and I'm not joking.